I want to talk to you now about mind mapping as it pertains to working out what you want next in your career. And I find it a hugely useful exercise. And really, the idea of a mind map is to give you an overview of an idea via a series of subcategories and keywords that you come up through the course of a creative process. And mind mapping was designed by a guy called Tony Buzan. You can read a lot of his theory, but they are quite proven for getting you to come up with some really creative, strong ideas about where you want to head to next. So I've always found them super useful, as I said, and if I look at the roles that I have taken on in the past and compare them to the mind maps that I put together in the advent of those roles, there's a really high correlation between the components of those jobs that I ended up taking and what I put together in my mind map. So I'd really encourage you to just have a little bit of fun with this. The benefits of a mind map are, well, I think there's three things. The first thing is that I think they really help you focus your energy. Once you have your governing thought, if you like, about what your ideal role is, you can really focus your energy on heading towards that role and dedicating yourself to meeting the right people along the pathway. Secondly, it really helps you to articulate where you want to be heading. And that is obviously very effective when you're in an interview and you get the time-honoured question of what are you ideally looking to do? Well, you can be really, really clear about that. And finally, it really helps you to visualize the ideal role. And I'm a really firm believer in visualization. And I've got a quote to share with you on visualization, which might encourage you to partake in this process. So it says, when we visualize something, it creates neural pathways that are indistinguishable from those created by actually completing the task itself. So visualization is an act that's almost as good as doing the task. The science really backs this up. Your mind, after a while, simply can't tell the difference between what you are actually experiencing and what you think you're experiencing. So it's absolutely amazing. But what I'm going to encourage you to do now with this particular mind map, and this is just my idea of how you could run through the process. There are myriad ideas on Pinterest and so on and so forth, but this is a technique that I used and I found it really beneficial. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through 11 key areas of exploration, so topics that I'd like you to really ask yourself questions around. And what I'd love you to do is just put down a free flow of ideas about what comes to your mind when you think about this particular area. They are all features of a job that require really nutting out before you start to get into the job market. So there are 11 areas. Write a paragraph, write 2 pages, however long it takes. I would urge you, if you've got time and you're relaxed enough, to just keep writing until you naturally feel like you could stop. If you're really in flow about it and it's taking a while, that means you're passionate about it, it's important to you. So this would be really good to take the time to get this right now. And then at the end, what I'm going to ask you to do is look at those 11 topics and crystallize the information that you've put together under each of those topics into perhaps 1 or 2 lines, or even a keyword or an image, better still. And then you are going to put those together in a graphical summary on 1 page, so that there you have ideally your overview of what an ideal role is going to be. So let's start now with the first area. And for me, I think it's work location. What's your commute going to be like? Can you work remotely? What was the commute like last time you were in the office? Could you do that again? Will you only cycle to work now? Are you not prepared to go on public transport? Get it all down. The second area is your work style. So that's around whether you're the boss or not. You might be a second in charge. Do you like a formal or an informal setup? Do you like agile meetings, standing up around a desk, or do you like to have everything scheduled and tabled into an agenda? Everything is fine, nothing is wrong, but your personal strong preferences must come through here. The next thing is what you're doing all day. So point 3 is, what are my tasks? What are my deliverables going to be? And what you could do to think about for inspiration here is 2 things. Number 1, what are the duties that you have performed, looking back over your career, that you've really enjoyed? You've enjoyed doing them so much that you don't even notice you're doing them. And I would describe those as the tasks that you perform when you're in flow. They give you energy. You could do them time and time again and not even notice you're working. They're your flow tasks, and they are the ones that you really want to make sure your next job comprises. And then the other thing that I would recommend you do is think about what your ideal role title is. Then jump onto LinkedIn and look at some CVs and get an idea of what the tasks or deliverables are for the people who have those job titles. Just simple as that. And obviously list the things that you simply don't want to do as well. That's really key here. The next area will be balance, and I'm talking there about whether you're part-time or full-time. Is it really important to you to work a compressed week? Could you be doing a job share with somebody? Are you happy to be doing 5 days, but you'd ideally like to be beating the traffic in the morning and getting in early and perhaps leaving a little bit earlier? Again, write down your ideals and you can work back from there. I remember that when I was looking for a job after being on a break for 6 years, I told a friend that my ideal role would be 4 days a week and 3 of those in the office and 1 from home. But I thought that I wouldn't have any leverage to secure that sort of job because I'd been out for so long. And I remember him saying to me, why not just go for that now? Why not just ask for that in the first role that is offered to you? And I didn't, and I wish I had, because I've ended up with that setup now 2 years down the track. But had I been a little bit more articulate about what I wanted, I think I probably could have got it a little bit faster. So that's a little bit of advice for you there. The next one is culture, and I think this is a really, really big one. It comprises a lot of parts of a job. So what's the feel of the place when you go in? What are the people like? Are they very social outside work? Do you have to have things in common with them outside work, or are you happy just to rub along with them when you're there? Do they have an established wellness policy, or do they have faith groups, or is there a big cycle to work scheme? Do they have cycle storage? What is their diversity and inclusion like? Is there a very established learning and development function which might be really crucial to you as a returner? All of those types of things. What do you wear to work? Is it a very casual environment, or is it very formal? Are you expected to do a lot of going out after work or not? Put it all down, and that's probably one culture that will take you a couple of pages. The next thing is, well, what are your strengths? So you may have done something in the past like a Myers-Briggs or a StrengthsFinder 2.0 to help you summarize what your strengths are, what you bring to a role. But if you haven't, it might be worth getting online and looking at some of the free resources. There are a number of different Strengths Finder assessments that you can do online now. And the other way to think about what your strengths are, what you bring, are looking at old appraisals and what former bosses have said about you. You've probably got a pretty good idea of what you're particularly good at and what your offering is, but I would make sure that you write it all down here, because that has a very high correlation to work contentment if you're doing the things that you're really strong on. I think the next area would be values. So this is again a really important one for me, and what I'm talking about here is, what are the things that you hold very, very dear? What do you spend your time on, and what is the focus of your thoughts? There's a guy called John DeMartini who does a fantastic values assessment on his website. I'll add a link in the download. And what he recommends that you do is go through the areas of your life in 7 different subsets, things like mental, physical, social, career-wise, financial. There are a couple more, I can't come up with them off the top of my head. But then what he gets you to do is really sort those values out for yourself and work out what are your highest priorities. And the reason that that's important is that you want to be working for an organisation where their values are quite closely aligned to yours. It is proven that workers extract a very high intrinsic value from feeling like what they believe in is the same thing that the organisation that they are working for believes in. So the more aligned your values can be, the happier you're likely to be at work. And if you can identify up front what those values are, then you won't go into a role where your values and what you really hold dear and important to you is compromised. So spend a bit of time on that one. The next area is your professional profile. And here I'm talking about what you want to be, or how you want to be portrayed, perhaps beyond the organisation. Is it important to you to have a professional public profile? Do you want to be a thought leader? Would you like to have a responsibility for governance, perhaps at an industry level? Would you like to have a non-exec directorship? Would you like to be on a committee? There's a great organisation called Women on Boards that match makes women to committees and governance bodies, anything really from the Hockey Association to an investment bank's board. So that might be something that you would consider. And if you would, it's a great thing to have down on your mind map, and then you can start articulating it to prospective employers, and you can also be channeling your energies towards looking for those opportunities. Obviously, they're a great selling point for any organisation if you are prepared to be a thought leader and they can attach their brand to your brilliance. The next thing is the type of company. Obviously, do you want to work for something that is small and new and innovative and entrepreneurial, or would you prefer the security and stability of a FTSE 250? What is the company going to be like? Is it really important that they have a very strong brand? Would you like to work for a global organisation where there's the potential to travel? All of those types of things, pop them down. And then the 10th area that I'd love you to explore is a really commercial one, and that is the value that you bring to a role. Now, this is different to strengths, and the reason why is that when we talk about the value you bring, I mean what the results or the fruits of your labour meant in commercial terms to your organisation. This is the nub of it. This is how you start to negotiate the best structure for you in terms of flexibility, work life, salary, so on and so forth. So the way to think about the value that you bring is go back through your CV, look at all your achievements and break them down into what you did, what the task that you actually performed, what the result of you performing that task was, and then finally what was the benefit to the organisation that you were working for. If you can align that as much as possible to a commercial outcome, so a cost saving, a streamlining, a happier culture, all of those types of hard results are the things that will really give you a strong bargaining position when you go in at the end of your job search process. So that's the value that you bring, really important one. And then the 11th area is really just going back through all of the roles that you've had and thinking through the lens of these first 10 topics. What are the parts of those roles that were really great and the parts that you just never want to see again? So thinking about past roles in terms of what was the culture like, what was my commute like, what was the flow of my work, the balance of my work like, what strengths could I bring to bear, so on and so forth. Go through each of the 10 topics and think about the jobs you've had. So your past is going to inform your future to a degree. Then finally, you've got your 11 areas, and you could have a paragraph, you could have 2 pages. Well done with whatever you've managed to do. If you can, revisit it at a later date. Really put some work into thinking about what is it that I actually want. And what's equally important is what do I definitely not want in my next role. They're your non-negotiables. Then what you do is you'll see in the download there's a final page where you put together a summary of each of the topics, ideally a line or a key word. So there's a sentence or a word for culture, there's a sentence or a word for balance, there's a sentence or a word for location. If you can add a little picture or a graphic to those satellite topics, even better, because it makes it more vivid, it helps you visualize. And then right in the middle, I want you to plonk the heading, my ideal role. And then what you will see branching out from my ideal role is each of the features that you must have in your next opportunity. And that is it, really. That is the mind map. You've got one final page which headlines all of the things that are really, really important to you. And from there, you can start to articulate what you want. You can start to move towards it in terms of energy and the people that you meet, and you can really start to visualize it. And like I say, I have really reaped the rewards of doing this process. So please do take some time over it. Use another format if my one doesn't suit. The most important thing is that you get down a really great creative flow of ideas about your next role. You deserve it.